Yeah.
Yeah. You want to pin us, so it's still.
Done?
Yep, we're good. We are good.
We're good. All right, public communications, Deb, yeah,
No,
nothing. Approval of the minutes of January 24th site walk.
So moved.
I wasn't there. I'll second it, but I wasn't there.
I wasn't there either.
Annie, were you there?
second.
Good, good girl.
Annie, were you there?
Thank
So you'll make.
I went on two. I
It's
think.
okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to be there to second. It's fine.
No.
Yep.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, fine. Regular meeting, January 24th,
So moved.
Second,
right? Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions. January 29th, site walk.
so moved.
Let's see.
Second.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, all right. All of those are done. We have a new application, Deb?
None other than the one that's on the agenda.
Okay, I guess saw that one. So we'll go with that. West Mystic Ice Pond.
That one. Is that mic on?
That comes out.
It just pulls out. There you go.
Hello? Okay.
Hello.
All right. Sorry, it's long, but I'm not gonna, I'm gonna go through it pretty quickly. So while he's pulling that up, for the record, Rebecca Nolan, landscape architect, licensed in Connecticut and Rhode Island. Full disclosure, this is my parents' property. This is my mom here with me tonight. So, I know this property well. I grew up here, went to school in Groton, and now I live with my family in Stonington. But I'm excited to present this tonight. I think it's the first time we've been in front of this board, although I know that we've been to several meetings in the past for other applications on this property. So with that, I'll just get started. And then I think feel free to ask me if you have questions while I'm kind of walking through this. So you might want to zoom out a little bit, but I think everybody knows where the parcel is at the corner of Noank Road and West Mystic. There's two parcels, and I'll explain why both parcels are in this application. But parcel one is the vacant lot, which has the old ice pond on it. And then parcel two is the single family lot, which I grew up on. That's number 542. And the parcel was, number one was purchased in 2018 after, I think you probably all know this, a long history of people trying to develop this lot, put a house on the pond property. So anyway, that's the context. We can go to the next one. This is just the aerial. You can see that, the parcel tends to be very much filled in with vegetation. There's really only one piece of it over here that's maintained as lawn right now. And I think this is the other context, the sewage pumping station down here owned by the town of Groton. So next slide. Just quickly, again, I think you guys all know this, but in 1938, basically they rerouted Noank Road. So you can see prior to that, it was completely clear cut, pretty common for that area. What's very nice is right across the street, Avalonia owns a large parcel that has continuously been vegetated, which is quite nice. But here's the 1965 imagery. So you can see where the road used to be and where it came into the property. Next slide.
It did it used to be straighter? I don't.
It used to be more of a straight line perpendicular and then what happened was they rounded it a little bit. And I believe that was because this hill was treacherous, still is. We can put that in the record too. So anyway, that's just to kind of give you the context of the land there. The next is a taking map from the state. And you can see this was the original Route 215 running kind of perpendicular, and it actually came in about 40 feet. So it was a pretty large taking at the time. This was 1938. One of the things I just want to note and put on record is that I did finally receive a warranty deed that very clearly states that the state has the right to discharge stormwater into the property. That was a big question for us, but we did track that down last week. And I am meeting with Norm Miller on Friday to take a look at the culvert. So that's more of a separate conversation, but just so that you guys have the context of all the different things that we're looking at. Next slide. So there's the residence as it looked in, I believe that was 1986. Residence now from the street view. This was just found from Mystic Historical Society, which just updated their digital collections, which is quite awesome because we had never seen this photo. This would be standing at the corner of Cedar and Noank Road, looking towards Willow Point. It is it says questionable, but it's 1954 Hurricane Carol. And so what's interesting in this one to me is that the barn is there. We've never seen a picture of that barn. So, and then just a context from around 1993, when the current owners had owned the residential property, really the other property next door, the vacant lot, was not maintained. This area down here used to be some sort of strawberry patch. It just grew in and turned into mostly brambles. So, it really hasn't been, maintenance hasn't been done on it for a very long time. There was a inland wetlands application that went through in the early 2000s. But I think that, didn't go very far. That was essentially another potential trying to put a house in there. So we can go to the next slide. I just want to give you context of what my clients have done with their existing parcel, just so that you kind of see what we're thinking about for the pond property. Really the marsh and the riparian fringe, a lot of it is invasive cleanup, but it's all can be done mechanically by hand. The reason that we're putting an application in today for the pond is there's a significant amount of invasives that you really just can't take out simply by hand. So that's kind of the salt marsh fringe. Upland, there's some existing trees. At some time, I believe a realtor thought that there could be a house out there. Absolutely can't be. It's basically a highland area within a marsh. It's all bedrock. And then you can see that when we weren't sure what was going to be going on with that vacant parcel, put in a privacy buffer. And I just point that out because I think that's kind of the look that we're going for, like more of a mixed buffer rather than a straight line of evergreen trees or something like that. Dry meadow versus the salt marsh fringe. So just adding different types of native plants, both trees and shrubs. So you can go to the next slide. So that's the Noank, that's the 542 Noank Road parcel, which obviously they've owned for over 30 years. This is the 0 Noank Road parcel, which I wish it had an actual address, but it's just 0 Noank Road for the record. And this includes the pond, the dam, the spillway. It also includes that stormwater outfall I mentioned that the state has. And so these photos were all taken during the most recent winter storm in December. You can see that the pond does fill up and it actually does stay fairly full. The dam is, old, but it still holds the water in pretty well. This is the spillway out here. So there's like rubble that's kind of, the rubble wall where that is. So it does leak. But what we've noticed is as the pond has filled up more, some of the Phragmites in the deeper sections has actually like receded a little bit. And I think part of that is because of, the level of the pond. And And then this is just a photo of the stormwater outfall. And then just to note that there is an old ice house foundation there. It's on the Cedar Road side. We can go to the next. A few more photos so you can kind of see what we're looking at. There's a lot of Norway maples on this property. They're not all in terrible condition, but the ones that I've noted on the landscape plan are. These are on Cedar Road. This one is on top of the culvert. We're going to hopefully have a very good conversation with DOT on Friday and see if this is within their realm to remove, because it is growing right out of the head wall. And, you know, I think that that may be a maintenance concern for them as well. So we will see. Stay tuned. Along Cedar Road, there's a guide rail. There's some utilities. There's actually a utility pole with a light on it that used to light up the pond for ice skating. That's still there. I don't think it's hooked up. Haven't seen anything recently. But basically all along the corner of Cedar Road, as you come up to Noank Road, is mostly tree of heaven, which is an invasive species. Also the spotted lanternfly, which everybody should be worried about. It's like its primary host. So that is, those are kind of the areas. This is, you know, you can see where some of the rock walls are. You can keep going, next slide. And then some summer photos, because it's really hard to see stuff in the winter, but this is what it looks like. It's kind of a jungle on the corner of Cedar and Noank Road. Property owners have started putting in very, like, you know, tactile additions, shrubs, but we really, I think, need to do a lot more cleanup. And so that's where we, that's why we really needed to put in a wetland permit for this, because the trees, the Ailanthus altissima, the tree of heaven, the Norway maple, and then the other big one is the Phragmites. And Phragmites is significant. It's in other parts of the property, I would say behind the 542, there's pieces that come up here and there and you can cut them down, but this is like a very mature stand of Phragmites. So it's something that would need to be a multi-year process. And so then we also have the usual suspects: knotweed, honeysuckle, porcelain vine, bittersweet, and multiflora. And you can scroll through. We had not had a survey done, so we got a survey done last spring. And in addition to mapping the property boundaries, they also did a wetland survey. And I think that'll probably be the most interesting. So if you go to the next slide. And this was done using the auger. So it's based on soils. You guys all know that. And so what basically this is showing is there's really 3 regulated wetlands. There's the coastal tidal wetland, which is out here in the marsh. There's the ice pond. And then there's this stream that basically comes from the head wall down to the pond. And that's being classified as an inland wetland, likely because the soils are different from basically where it dumps into the pond. So I think that's everything. Essentially the entire parcel, both parcels are in the upland review area. And obviously there's, you know, a pretty strict coastal resource setback. It's, you know, you can see it in yellow there. So we can go to the next slide. So this starts to get into what we're hoping to do. And so, you know, there's a couple large trees I mentioned, the 2 that are on Noank Road, 2 Norway maples, one of which hoping maybe the state might be able to help us with. And then there's 2 down on the corner of Cedar near the sewage pumping station. And those are in rough condition, even though they're big mature trees, they're just falling down and, you know, ice storms, whatnot. I think they would be better replaced with native plants. So those are the big trees. The rest of the trees are mostly the tree of heaven. What you see here on this illustrative is just based on aerial. So in my application, I think what we're proposing is that we would tag all of the trees that we would want to remove, and that we would basically in this section. So if we think about this pink area as being the proposed vegetation management area. It's like 48,000 square feet. A significant amount of it is mostly tree of heaven, which smaller caliper, but still something we would like to, we would tag and then remove. So we can go to the planting plan. And, this is kind of what we were, thinking about. There's kind of two different areas of this vegetation management area. There's what I'm calling the upland slope areas where there's a lot of existing trees, a lot of natives, some mixed in with vines, but generally not a ton of terrible things. Around the edge of the pond, basically, you can imagine like a 20-foot buffer is really all invasive. It's a lot of ailanthus, it's a lot of multiflora rose. There's unfortunately some knotweed, which as you know, it's very difficult to get rid of. So noted a couple of nice trees to remain. There's, some different hollies, cedars, all those things. So really trying to put together a replanting plan that's mostly native trees and shrubs. Not taking anything down that's providing enough shade and isn't in rough condition. Unless, of course, it's the tree of heaven. So if we go scroll down, you can see some of the pictures of what we're thinking. There is a desire to create some more buffer on the corner of Cedar and Route 215. And that's really because the lights coming down the road. I mean, right now, the tree of heaven in the winter doesn't do very much, but in the summer, it does kind of protect from light pollution coming in. So, and there's really no evergreens in that corner. So proposing, putting in some larger, like 6-foot high evergreen buffer in that area. And then really underplanting it with shrubs. So, yeah.
What do you mean by light pollution? To whom?
So it to the residents at 542.
On
So
Cedar 542.
yeah, so when you're coming down the hill, the lights from it's the lights basically come right in the yeah. So that's kind of, they're hoping to replant this with more of like a mixed buffer rather than just a deciduous buffer. I do believe that before it was clear cut, in the 1800s, it was likely more of like an upland cedar road, different types of oaks. There's some remnants of that, but it's not, it's just, there's no native seed bank there. It's been unmaintained for so long. So we can scroll, I'm almost done here. The upland slope, a lot of shrubs, native things that you see in a lot of different landscapes around here. So nothing outrageous. It would be nice to get some color in there. So, we've proposed a couple of flowering things, witch hazels. We can keep scrolling. Ferns will do good on the upland slope, maybe not so much towards the more salt marsh area. But this is kind of that wetland buffer. And so most of these plants are all taken from the stormwater manual, which just got updated in maybe December of last year. So it's brand new. And it's basically using these as the references for planting. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 more slides. And then noting that some of the areas that are more open that didn't have existing tree cover, but really are mostly like the honeysuckle vine and a lot of the multiflora rose would be more of like this meadow concept. And I would say that all of these plants are pollinator species. There is an opportunity here to, because of where it is, it's a visual corner of Route 215 and Cedar Road. It could be part of the pollinator pathway, could be a demonstration project. I don't know. I think that's kind of the direction that we're hoping to go in with this. So the invasive removal, I think, is the key piece here. And in the narrative, I go through the different methods that are appropriate. I do feel that because of the different species, the tactics for removal have to be specific to the species. So without generalizing too much, I think mostly mechanical methods, hand pruners, using more, not using anything that's going to compact soil. So no large equipment. We're really hoping that with the Atlantis, we would be able to take the trees down from a bucket truck off of the road. But again, these are those are the things that we're thinking about in terms of the invasive removal. All of this is really feels like an ongoing project. You really don't eradicate any of these. So unfortunately, it's more of just like keep going with maintenance, year after year. By year 3 is generally what people are finding, if you're consistent enough that you can kind of get control of these by the 3rd year. I've not had a ton of success with Phragmites in general, but I think because of, this is a very contained area. So if it's possible to keep the Phragmites from spreading elsewhere, that seems like a really, positive outcome of removing it, because I think that would be the most invasive of methods. You can't pull it, so we'd have to go in there with some sort of brush hog or gas powered weed trimmer or something. So like you can use the gas powered hedge trimmers. There's also, the disposal of all of the species is different for each one. So I've kind of laid that out in this plan. And yeah, I think that's kind of why we're here tonight. We wanted to, see if this is something that would be possible to do under the maintenance permit, or if we need to go forward with something of a more larger permitting process.
The only time that I've had good luck with Phragmites in a big area, we mowed it with a hedge trimmer,
Yeah.
and then we painted
Yep.
all of the stalks.
Yeah.
With what?
I can't remember.
Like a
what it
Roundup
was.
kind of
It wasn't-
thing.
It wasn't Roundup, but I can't.
They
remember
call it
what was.
it has a terrible name. It's called the bloody glove.
Oh,
Remember this?
but it's a systemic, so it goes deep right to,
And
yeah.
that killed it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
didn't come up again.
You can
That's
get
probably
poison
illegal.
ivy that way too.
Yeah, the
And not-
challenge with,
Knotweed,
That's a lot of.
yeah,
part of a nuclear attack. Knotweed is tough. There's a piece of Avalonia property on a little further down the road
yep,
that backs onto the cove down there.
yep.
And there's a stand of knotweed.
Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I used to mow that.
yeah,
And when I first started, I mean, it was huge. And I cut it down by hand, and then I came through with my mower and I mowed it every few weeks. And by the 3rd year, one little thing would come going, and that would be it, and pretty much killed it off. Since I stopped mowing it,
It's come
it's
back.
come back.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying for 50 years to
So it
get.
doesn't
Yeah, but
really
they
go
don't mow
away.
that.
It's coming right up toward our house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So let's just keep on this.
Yeah.
application. So the 2 questions I have, so they're. Now, I skated on this one.
I know.
I'm way over. the-
Oh, your mic.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. So, we've walked this property when there was an application. for a
Yeah.
house, Yeah.
Yep.
And so the amount of sediment that's being
Flushed in there.
flushed in there from the road
yeah,
is pretty significant.
Yeah.
And so it's my feeble opinion that that's a lot of the reason why that Phragmites is doing so well there.
Yeah.
It's got a nice little substrate,
Mhm.
nice little
Yeah,
sand.
there's a little
Yeah,
delta for
yeah,
you there.
exactly.
there is. Yep, exactly. Yeah,
Say what?
Road salt.
I'm sorry.
the road salt.
The Franklin's likes the road salt. Road
She's
salt.
saying the Phragmites does well with like runoff and
Yeah,
road
yeah,
salt.
I'm
Yeah,
saying the same thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So I just, you're gonna meet with the state people on Friday. And I just
Yeah.
wonder, what is there, what is in there for, catch basin? I mean,
it's
nothing.
a head wall right
That's all it
now.
is. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
It's just coming from one side to the other.
Yeah.
It's
That's
a
right.
head wall and a
That's right.
pipe.
There's basically, as soon as the water comes in from the street, it just dumps and it's been
Right.
eroding. So
Yeah.
that's the questions, I have for the state are definitely more of a long-term process. I would love to get started on the invasive kind of vegetative cleanup, but I do think that you're absolutely right that the long term, without having the state do something,
Right.
improve the head wall, improve the runoff
Or at least
situation,
catch.
Catch some of that. Yeah,
catch it,
exactly.
yeah, or is some sort of pre-treatment that's not happening right now. Because I mean, in terms of what we are allowed to do as homeowners of the property, you can maintain it. You can pull leaves out, you can pick up trash, but you can't really do anything else. So, it is really under, it's eroding around the pathway. I don't actually, and I feel like I can go on record with this, but I don't actually feel like it's a terrible thing that the stormwater is going into this pond, because if you look at the history of the pond, it often really did have a hard time staying full.
Mhm.
And so I think without the stormwater, it would really be more of just a low area.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the
So-
stormwater. I'm worried about the sediment that comes with it.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of
Yeah,
sediment that
yeah.
comes down.
Yeah,
so.
that was, how long ago was that we
Okay.
walked that?
Rather.
A while, right?
15 years.
So I
maybe.
can't,
Yeah.
right, so I can't even
Yeah.
imagine now, what it is. And so that's my only, comment on that. And the other comment is you also, so this is a very, productive, wood frog, tree
Yeah.
frog.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's just
It's-
insane when you
It's
drive.
vocal.
For the record, I live on Cedar Road, so it's insane.
yeah,
When you drive by there,
yeah.
like you can't even make it up.
There's a long diatribe from my father when there was a previous application about all of the wildlife
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
so I mean, and there still is wildlife regardless of whether there's, the invasive species or not.
Mm.
I think, our concern is just definitely the tree of heaven, like being a host for the spotted lanternfly. And then, all of the other invasives that keep everything else from growing. So,
And so just, so go, so the record for the tree of heaven, I don't have any trouble with. getting rid
Yeah.
of that. So what is your exact plan for the Phragmites?
so I think, well, first you have to be able to get at the Phragmites,
Yep.
and the guidance that we've gotten during our CRMC, Rhode Island has coastal resource management, has actual training for certified invasive managers. So when we undergo that training, they always recommend you start at a roadside and move inward, because all of the potential inputs usually start at the road. So I think the biggest thing would be to get to the edge of the pond where the Phragmites is. And it would need to be cut in the beginning of the season, because once it gets, past, it's usually mid-July, it fronds out, and then you've got the seed heads, and it's not a good time to cut it. It can actually make it worse if you cut it when it's like already sprouted out. So I think in order to get to that phase, we would have to do the understory first, and some
So
of
do the
the,
tree of heaven.
yeah, the
first.
tree of heaven are right along the roadway. The
Yep.
knotweed is along the roadway.
Yep.
The rest of
Although you
the,
guys have done a really good job on that knotweed.
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. No, these guys are out with their hands and on their hands and knees getting rid of it. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, it's the knotweed obviously has, I told you you're on a very visible spot. Everybody
Very
can see it.
visible.
The knotweed has those rhizomes, so like, and the ones that are on the side of Cedar Road, you can actually pull out if you do it early enough. But I think one of the other challenges that they have as owners of the property is that the state technically does maintenance, and they, like I mentioned, they have a very large right of way there. It's a 40-foot wide right of way. And so that, you know, they
On
come in
215 or just on 215?
on 215,
Right.
yeah, but it comes in significantly, so, you know, they've mostly been mowing it twice a year. That doesn't usually keep anything down, so I think, my father's been mowing it more bi-weekly. And I think that is what you would need to do to keep everything from coming back, but.
So your thought would be to if you got a permit, to work on the tree of heaven with bucket trucks from the road,
Yeah,
and then once you got that organized, then you would have
better access to the,
Mhm.
because part of what makes the invasive cleanup on the 542 parcel much more manageable is that, like I said, it's they're individual stands, like you can cut them back. But there's also a place to dry them.
Yep.
And so when I mentioned, like, well, why are we putting in an application for both of these parcels? Part of it is because we are gonna need the property at 542 to be able to dry out a lot of the Phragmites, the knotweed, have those drying stations. Everything within the vacant lot is really wetland. So and that's, I think we want to keep it out of the wetland as much as possible, basically, so.
And so at this point, you're just talking about cutting the Phragmites, you're not talking about painting it at this point, you're not
No.
talking about digging it.
No, no, it would just be cutting it to that, it's 6 inches is what is recommended.
Mhm.
And making
that's
sure,
hand cutting with a
So,
super weed whacker or something.
I think this would absolutely need a weed whacker, so, and it can't be anything that, you know, I think that those concerns that usually come up from a wetlands agency are, you know, you have a mower or something, you're gonna compact the soil. The other concerns would be, you know, if there's any sort of like leakage from like these bigger machines, so. Because a lot of the stands are in the water, it really requires the muck boots and
Right.
going in there and
Mm,
actually
yeah,
just,
yeah.
so. And I think with with the tree of heaven, there's a couple trees that are over like 12-inch caliber, but most of them they grow so fast, and they're, you know, most of them are within like the 4 to 6 range.
Yeah.
So, those I don't think will be such an issue. But you know, things over 24-inch caliber, I'd really like a licensed contractor to remove them. Rather than having, you know, homeowners doing that, just because it's a much more involved process. So there's about 4 of those trees that are of the larger size that we would likely need to hire a contractor to come in with a bucket truck.
He didn't say anything about the down trees everywhere.
Yeah, so one of the, I guess it's worth putting this on record too. The Eversource comes, you know, whenever they can, and they do the tree trimming along the state highway. Most of the time they take stuff away. Sometimes they don't. If it has fallen down and it wasn't something that was taken down on there, they leave it. So there's a significant amount of like stumps and things hanging around the site. At this point, we are not proposing any stump grinding. We're just simply proposing to cut everything to a stump height and just let it decompose there. With Tree of Heaven, you do have to be careful. You have to come back and check it again. But usually that works pretty well with Norway maples. So yeah, so there's no proposal to do any sort of like digging out of big roots. It would just be cutting the stumps down to the, you know, manageable level. So yeah, I think that's what you were getting at, right?
No. All the trees.
So within the wetland area, and I would say in that 20-foot buffer between the edge of the water and what I'm calling the upland slope of the pond, there's a significant amount of trees that have toppled over because of, just roots, and it's been interesting because the pond level, like I mentioned, does change significantly. It's very full right now, but I can tell you in the middle of August, you can basically walk across the bottom. So, it's a lot of different changes happening there. But, a lot of the bigger stumps and things, it would be nice to be able to like pile them or be able to stockpile rather than just leaving them where they are. I think that's kind of how Eversource operates. If it's
So you
there
take
already,
it- So when you
leave it.
take the tree of heaven, you're gonna take that offsite.
we would take that and basically use we would actually not take that one off site. We would just use that as stumps and pile them they can either be burned or you can basically let them decompose. You have
So
to,
wait, so stumps I get, but what about everything that's above
They're gonna
that? You're
leave
gonna
it
cut
lying
that.
there.
it would have to come,
Make
yeah,
a
it would have to
pile.
be
There's
moved.
Trees that have come down, trees that have come down over time that have been
I
cut.
think you gotta use the mic if you're gonna talk and say your name.
I'm Linda. There's a bunch of trees that have come back down over time and that have been sawed up and just left in piles.
Mm.
So there's piles of different trees. I mean, I know there's a sassafras that came down that's piled up. I know there's a Norway maple that came down is piled up. They're just there.
Mm.
I don't even know when they came down, but they've been there for a while and they're decomposing.
Yeah, so I guess my question about that, so there's a fair number of tree of heaven.
Yeah.
There's a lot,
There. So
yes.
you're just gonna
But they're
cut them
smallish.
and then leave them.
So we would cut them, and then I think in the notes in my narrative, they can either be burned or they can be piled in like a wood pile. And actually wood piles are not terrible places for habitats. As long as it doesn't, you do have to be careful with tree of heaven because they can resprout.
Right.
So burning is always the best, but it adds another level of activity, right? So, I think ideally most of this would be able to stockpile it in a wood pile.
A certain place on site.
Yeah, and that's why I have the 542 as part of this application, because most of the stockpiling would need to be on that parcel.
Sunny
Mhm.
part.
And it's basically where, any other sort of, where there's a woodshed and there's other,
So if you have a bucket truck in there to get the tree of heavens, how are you gonna get those?
well, I'm hoping that if we have a licensed contractor come out, they're gonna take those with them. This
Yeah,
would be
I
for
would think
anything
so.
that the homeowner would do on their own.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You might want to be aware that trees that are down in contact with the ground become habitat for salamanders and
Exactly.
things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's the challenge with even the Phragmites is that, there is habitat in there. We know that there's a deer living in, one of there, you can see where there's certain areas. But, year after year, it's never been more of there's no like positive functional
No.
ecosystem there. So I think that, based on the plant list and, some of the things that we've done in the past, that we would be able to create that sort of wetland buffer that doesn't exist.
I agree.
The other thing you may want to think about, that gully that's being created by the water,
Yeah,
may want to think about putting some substantial riprap gravel,
yeah,
stuff this size,
Be nice if the
up
state did
that,
that.
that's,
That's where I was going with that.
yeah, the state needs to,
disperse the energy of the water so it doesn't dig.
yep. Yeah, I mean, after the last storm, I can tell you there was such a deep hole. It was like a
Mhm.
6-foot drop.
Mm.
So I think, when I meet with the state, on Friday, part of it will be that this is a health, safety and welfare issue. Because that head wall is so close to the sidewalk on a state road, a road that's walked, it's also a greenway, right? Tri-Town Greenway runs through, on Noank Road, I think, or the Crosstown Greenway, maybe. Anyway, so there's I'm hoping that the state will be able to see that as, something that they might be able to upgrade. I did find out that they're not planning to do any significant upgrades to stormwater. That was one of my questions because, they've come out with this new manual. There's all these new things in the manual about how you can do low impact development. So I don't know if it's a priority thing or, but my hope is to keep the conversation going, so that might be something that they consider in the future. So I know that's much more of a long-term process, to work with the state. I think the last applicant that came through, and, was proposing, to build some sort of structure over there, had proposed to put a pipe in that would just go right into the pond. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that have gone on in the past. I think this would be the first time an applicant would come forward with something that's much more like low impact, more about the vitality of the pond rather than the ability to put something on top of the wetland. So.
And so just so we stay on record, what are you looking for a permit to do?
So we're looking for a permit to remove the invasive vegetation. I also put together a timeline for that. I think it could be it would need to come hand in hand with a maintenance permit because it's such a long process. So I don't know if that's something that this board would also consider if goes in as a maintenance permit or if it's just a regular wetland permit, site plan review. There is, because this is a coastal area, it's also within the CAM setback. So it does technically require a site plan review, which is why you saw the long application with all the drawings, because I assume that I may at some point need to put that in. But I'm hoping that this is a minor activity and not a major activity so that it could fall under the more of the maintenance and revegetation. So.
Yeah, so I would think that it's minor. I would think.
I would too, it's an improvement, it's not moving any dirt.
And I mean, the initial thought, I'm not sure what I think about a maintenance.
Wouldn't that be a condition?
We don't really do that.
Yeah.
It's either a wetland permit or you don't need a wetland.
Yeah.
permit.
Yeah.
So the permit will be good for 10 years.
Okay,
If
that's-
it's granted.
Yeah.
And you have the opportunity to ask for an extension of
Okay.
that.
Yeah. And that's essentially what we're looking for is just vegetation right now, no soil compaction, no fill, no removal of, any materials besides vegetation above the ground. So I think ideally, and that would be on both of the parcels. There is some interest, I think, with the current owners to potentially combine the parcels. Right now, they're under two separate because they were purchased 30 years apart. So I think that, at some point we may want to do that where we would combine them into one parcel, but or at least.
Do you own the pond one now?
So my
You-
mother, Linda, owns the pond parcel, and then my father, Charlie, and Linda own the house parcel together.
Oh,
So it's, yes, and the whole backstory, but essentially, I think they wanted to buy both parcels in 1992, but at the time, it was always said that pond parcel was a building lot. And so the
Oh.
price of the land
Too
was
high.
very,
yeah.
That's
I
right.
remember.
so that's kind of like the history of it. And when they did the lot line revision, or when they split off the two lots, they basically just arbitrarily had a lot line. So it made it very difficult for anybody that did own that pond parcel to be able to do anything
Mhm.
because
Well,
of
there
the
was a trailer
setbacks.
there at one point.
It was on the Cedar Road end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, think anybody was living in it. I think that was more of like this is, you know,
A respite area.
yeah, it
It was a
was,
little bit of a slap in the face because they didn't. get
It
a permit.
was.
Yes.
because they didn't
Say
get
it
a
out
permit.
loud.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
so,
didn't
and
get a
that's been a while. I think that was like
It's been gone
early
forever.
2000s. So, and since
So they
that,
don't want it anymore, that couple.
no, they,
Shoot.
so
Yeah.
that is the background is really their application. They, I think, wanted to build something. And since then, in the early 2000s, it's really the whole parcel hasn't been really maintained or touched.
Yeah.
So with the, you know, aside from the mowing along the edges. So that's kind of where it stands now is it's been several years without any real attention.
So what?
We don't know what we'll find out there.
Classify it.
We'll
Can't vote
classify it.
tonight?
No, you cannot vote
Yep.
tonight. Classify it, decide if you want to cite law.
I think we know where it is.
Yeah, I don't need to walk it. but-
We've walked this before.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, we have 2 times, I think.
Well, I think I'll make a motion to classify it as a minor.
Second,
Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. All right,
Mhm.
we can't do anything else till next time.
All right.
just by law.
Yep.
We have to wait. We can't just act the same night.
Appreciate it.
Great Presentation.
Thank you
And
for
yes,
letting us
very-
present.
And very ambitious.
Yeah, I mean, this is a long-term, but
Yeah.
big project, so. All right, thank you. Do you want to say anything else?
No.
Okay.
In a word, no.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Should I grab the?
Yes, I think I was gonna just exactly.
Stop for share. Safe to remove hardware.
Oh, there's a little thumb, a thumb drive.
Wow.
Jeez.
I didn't even know it had a
That
plug in
is
there.
so funny.
Did it have what?
A little plug
It
in
had its
there
own little.
for a chip.
Oh, I see what you.
Well, thanks for coming out today.
Well, thank you. We come out every other Wednesday, so. just
Yeah, we're
anytime
used
you
to
wanna
this.
Come, feel free to join us.
Yesterday, I was,
Uh,
we're in the office, so.
Oh, were you? You came?
We weren't, but
Working.
the office was open.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we were working from home, but yeah.
Yeah.
The office was open.
Wow. Well,
Hi,
that meant
guys.
somebody had to
Good
be
night.
here if it was open. Somebody had to be here if it,
There were folks here.
oh,
Mm.
yeah. Huh. Oh, wow.
My son-in-law looked at that lot one time. And he told me about it. I said, what are you, crazy?
Mm.
And I went over what he could do and what he couldn't do, and that was that.
Yeah, that was never
But,
gonna
you know,
developable.
no. All right.
Mm.
After that. Grasso Gardens.
Right, we're having staff review on that project next week, so they are not here tonight.
Okay.
You have anything else? No,
I don't,
no, I don't either. But
Good.
when it warms up a little bit, it'll
Nope.
be good to go out and do a tour of the town and have a look at things, but I don't recommend it now.
Right.
I must be getting old or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I think.
That
you are.
lot on, not you, Fishtown Road, there's a cleared lot. Remember that young guy bought a lot and it goes for a while, then it drops off and it was all wetland. He's cleared the upland part.
yeah.
Well, they
Ready.
have a permit.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
We
ready to
gave them a
go.
Permit, we told them.
It's
that
big
they
enough
had-
for a garage.
Yeah. No, he'll be able to put something there, but he's gotta sell it to somebody first. Or something.
Yeah,
Maybe he might be building it on spec, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like there's much go, but whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
he's working within his permit,
yeah.
right?
That's right.
Mm.
yeah, I remember when we walked that.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
was in the,
Yeah.
It was a little island last time it rained.
Yeah, something like that.
all right, we have a motion to adjourn,
So moved?
second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
opposed? Eunice wants to.
No, I want to stay here forever. Just
Cold
kidding,
out.
just kidding.